think a handful of folks, if you saw the weekly Insights email and bulletin, I was traveling this last week. I'm part of a seminary program studying congregation development. So I spent a week in Chicago, well-timed to align with phenomenal weather. My dad lives in Ellensburg, and it was just very reminiscent of traditional, very windy, very cold, but a dry snow. So it is good to be home. Home. Think about that word, home, what that feels like. So what I experienced in Chicago was a unique kind of cold, a cold that we don't always get to experience here. That kind of cold that doesn't care about wearing a coat or optimism. I remember my friend in Michigan, we went for a walk, and instantly my cheeks started burning. So I was able to pull my scarf up and cover my cheek. You see, in that type of cold, when my cheeks started kind of burning a little bit, I wasn't thinking about how far we were going on the walk. I wasn't thinking about what we were going to have for dinner. I was thinking, man, we got to get moving. I got to cover things up. I just wanted to get through it. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling before. I wasn't, like I've talked a little bit about, I find that zone where I feel like I'm connected with God. At that moment, I was praying for God to keep me warm. So, just getting through. And in fact, after a mile out in that cold, we got home, sat down. They had picked up a Costco chicken pot pie. And then we had just some great fellowship, just sitting together and talking. So I like to think that there's changes and things we experience in our life that, man, it just to cut through the baloney. And honestly, for me, that type of cold weather, when you're in that cold, you focus on what is important. It cuts through all the excess stuff. So during the week, the hotel I stayed at was about 2 blocks from the cathedral, St. James Cathedral in Chicago, and that's also where the diocesan offices are in the seminary. And so I had an opportunity in the morning and the evening to walk back and forth to the hotel. And I kept on thinking, in light of what's happening in the world, this gospel. Because if we go through the Bible, I want you to look for how often Jesus called people out by name. Like Herod, the emperor. How many verses can you find where he specifically called? They're not there. And what I'm going to say is Jesus focused on what was important. And what's important is how we love and care for people. And I think of this image here in the Beatitudes. That's the map he gave us. You see, Jesus goes up on that mountain. The crowds are following him. They were expecting instructions. They were expecting that roadmap of what they needed to do. And some of them might not have even realized they were receiving it. But they wanted instructions of how to survive in a hard world. And what I see is everybody right now is acting out of anxiety and survival in their own way, and they're losing sight of their neighbors. Now, Jesus in this moment, he didn't give them the answers that the people wanted at that time. Instead, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Now, I think this is quite a message, because the annual meeting is not about focusing on these things in a real profound way. I do feel we're blessed to be in a church, and we work hard to bring our faith and our spirituality into the business of what we do. But really, in a world where numbers, money, counts of things matter, that isn't what Jesus was talking about here. So today, later on, as we're talking about attendance and budgets and accomplishments and concerns, I think it is good to lift up the important things that happen, yes. But those aren't the only things. because Jesus began somewhere else. Jesus begins with who we are as people, each of you, not what you produce, not what your output is. See, the Beatitudes are not a list of virtues to achieve. Jesus is naming a reality. See, Jesus is looking out at real people. He sees them. He is naming their experience. He is naming that they're carrying real burdens. And he says out loud, what God sees is already true. See, God's blessing is already resting on those the world overlooks. God's reign is already approaching and close to those who feel empty, who feel tired, who feel uncertain. And I think that matters even more today, especially now. Micah said it plainly. What does God require of you? To do justice. This is actually my favorite verse, by the way, so if you look in the whiteboard in my office. To do justice, to love kindness, to walk humbly with your God. Not to dominate, not to coerce, not to impress, not to wrangle or make someone do something. I said that and my mind just flashed. I don't know if you've ever seen, they used to bring the little greased wiener pig into the fairgrounds. And when I think of making somebody do something or wrangling, I often just go to what I call pig wrestling. I find that you get messy and greasy and the pig is just happy to be in that scenario. And you walk away wondering, what did I just go through? See, that's what God is warning us, what Jesus is talking about not to get tied up in. We're not called to secure a future by force, just to walk step by step with each other, together as people. Paul, writing to the Corinthians, reminds them that God's wisdom does not look like the world's wisdom. I think of some of the bad advice that I've received and embraced and even given at times. See, God chooses what is small, what some would consider foolish and weak, to reveal what truly matters. Not to shame us, not to make us feel bad, but to free us from the illusion that everything depends on us. And that is where the gospel meets our life here at St. David. You see, St. David is not called to be the biggest church in this community or in the city. We're not called to be the flashiest. We're not called to be the one that has all of the exact answers. We are called to be faithful people, to be merciful, to hunger and thirst for what is right, even when it costs us comfort or certainty. Blessed are the meek, Jesus says, not the passive, not the grounded, not the certain. The people who know who they are and do not need to grasp for power. That's what Jesus is talking about when he says meek. Blessed are the peacemakers. Not the peacemakers who avoid hard conversations about harm and what's going on to our neighbors and those we care about, but those who are willing to stay present, to be honest, and to stay connected when anxiety rises. If you have ever felt tired of trying to hold things together, I feel like today's gospel is for you. It is for me. If you have wondered whether what you offer is enough, I've wondered that. This gospel is for you. If you've ever looked at the church and thought, we are fragile, we are small, we are not what we used to be, this gospel is for you. Jesus does not bless us to get it right, to get it perfect. Jesus blesses us right here, right now, right where we are. And then invites us That's an invitation. He's not wrestling us, not telling us in a way that we must. He invites us to follow. So you see today, later on in the annual meeting, it's not just about looking back. It's about listening. It's about asking together where God has already worked among us. About noticing the quiet faithfulness that rarely makes headlines. The prayers said in kitchens, the meals that we share. The care that is offered without fanfare. The patience practiced when change feels too slow. Today in the psalm it asks, who may dwell in God's tent? The answer is not the perfect, the powerful, those in control or who have it right. It is those that walk with integrity, who speak truth, and do no harm. Ordinary faith, lived steadily. This season, Epiphany, is about revelation, not just about who Jesus is, but about who each of us is becoming in Jesus' light. So today, before we move on to our business later with reports and motions and votes, I want you to hear this first. Each of you are blessed and loved by God. Not because you've got it figured out or everything is settled or perfect, but because God is present with you. God knows you. Not because the future is clear and certain, but because you are not walking alone. We will do our work today. We will name challenges honestly. We will celebrate what has grown, and we will make decisions together. And we will do so as people who trust that God's wisdom often looks quieter and slower than we expect. Blessed are you, St. David's, when you choose mercy over fear. Blessed are you when you stay connected rather than reactive. Blessed are you when you keep showing up, even in the cold and wet. The kingdom of heaven is already near. Amen.